This happened when I was in high school, a long time ago. My mom recently found the paperwork about it when she cleaned out her office upon retiring from the police department. I remember being upset and scared when it happened, but reading the details as an adult, it sounded even worse than I thought. I was 17, working at a flower and gift shop. It's nighttime. A man comes in. Short, overweight, balding, 40s, creepy. He tells me about how he needs an apology gift for his girlfriend, so I offer a bouquet. Obviously, it's a flower shop. He says she doesn't like flowers because they die. This was the first weird thing, as he came into a flower shop. Then he goes into detail about how he hit her, and asks me if he thought was the right thing to do so. This was long ago, so I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, not if you want her to continue being your girlfriend. He then tells me what a great job I'm doing, and asks when I get off work. I dodge answering. He leaves. Nothing for 6 months. Then, right before Valentine's Day, he walks in the door 1 minute before close. It was dark, and from the outside, it looked like I was working alone, as my coworker was in the bathroom. Instinctively, it felt like a predator had just entered the room. You know, when something isn't right, and everything felt not right. I then noticed he had a tarnished revolver tucked into the front of his windbreaker, which was halfway unzipped. It was obvious he wanted it seen. I quickly scribbled a note to my coworker and said he has a gun, and handed it to her when she came out of the bathroom. She calmly walked to the phone and looked at me, wordlessly asking if she should call the cops. I shook my head no, as I felt it would have escalated the situation. God forbid he heard the police coming and took us hostage or something. I was going to try and act as calm and normal as I could, and hopefully not tip the situation into something more dangerous. He spends 15 minutes wandering around what was a fairly small shop. In retrospect, he was probably waiting to see if my coworker would leave, as it was now well past closing. Finally, he places an order for pickup on Valentine's Day, which it gives me his name and info, the police report I'm sure as hell about to file. He buys a card and pulls out a wad of $100 bills, which he slowly thumbs through as looking for the right one with which to pay for his $40 order. I ask him if he wants a bag, as it wouldn't be very inconspicuous as he just showed up at home with a Valentine's Day card. He replies, no, I didn't feel like being inconspicuous tonight, which seemed like an obvious reference to the gun hanging out of his coat. He leaves. We quickly lock the door and watch him sit in his truck outside. We were not about to exit the shop until he was gone. Finally, he pulls out of his parking spot and moves to another spot further away and continues to just sit there. I don't know how long we waited, but he finally left. I called my mom crying. She called the police, who came to the shop the next day to take a report. I told my best friend at the time what happened. She told her mother. Her mother happened to work with the man and informed the security at her job. She said he was very creepy and weird and liked to talk about weapons a lot. Security at his job pulled him into the office and questioned him about it. He claimed it was a glove in his pocket, not a revolver. The police were pissed at the company to make contact with him about it before they did, and he successfully dodged the cops' multiple calls and visits to his apartment. My mom, much to my teen fury at the time, made me quit my job, which was devastating as I loved it there. In retrospect, totally the right call. Dude came in on a Valentine's Day and picked up his order. I never saw him again. This happened in 2008, when I was 9 years old. I lived in a townhome community where each road had two sides of homes. In between the back of the houses, there was a back road with alleyways that went in between each building section. I lived on the edge of one of these, and my townhome was on one of the alleyways. I lived on one street, and across the back road on the opposite side lived an elderly woman, whose name I don't even know. I'm not sure what her situation was, but for whatever reason, she never liked me specifically. She was creepy and spray painted all of her windows so no one could see in her house. However, that never stopped her from sometimes staring out her bedroom window directly at mine, and keeping it open at night to shine a red strobe light into my room across the way. She used to yell how she hated us. I was in the 4th grade, and on a particular January morning, I had unfortunately missed my bus. My dad had sent me outside again in the car so he could drive me, and he said he'd follow me out soon after. As I was walking to my dad's car, she came out of the alleyway next to my house, slowly, with a gigantic kitchen knife behind her back. She raised it and started running at me. I was faster than her, so I was able to avoid her and was able to get into the house. She walked and stood on the neighbor's porch across the way and stared at my house. I was terrified. My dad ran out and yelled at her, and she said she wanted to get rid of us stupid kids. My parents called the police, but the police sent her home and had an ambulance pick her up later. My parents went to some kind of court meeting about it, but I don't really know the details. I didn't see her again after that, until 1 year later. I don't remember the day, but it had snowed that morning, so I was going to run out the front door and play in the snow. I opened the door to see her standing on the porch, but looking towards the road. I panicked, closed, and locked the door. I ran out to my parents' room and told them what happened, and we walked her off the porch up the street. I never saw her again after that. My family had since moved far away from here, but people I know say she still lives there, and her windows are still same sprayed windows. Though it doesn't affect me as much as it used to, I still don't like being around knives. I just want to start by saying I'm not the type to convince myself that every little thing is a paranormal encounter. That said, I have definitely had other paranormal encounters in my life that I 100% believe were real, as there was activity in both my great aunt's apartment and my best friend's house growing up. I just have doubts based on the circumstances of this particular one, whether it was real or a lack of sleep or a nightmare. I was visiting New York City at the time, on a work trip for staying in a nice hotel in Midtown. Out of the 4 nights I was staying in the hotel, 3 of them I came home particularly drunk. I work in advertising, and deals are won far more often at a bar than in the conference room. Not to mention, it's just the culture of an ad agency to work hard and play hard. Those nights I returned to the hotel were uneventful. On the 4th night, I declined to drink much, only having a glass or 2 of wine, as I have a 6 a.m. cross-country flight at JFK to catch. Coming back to the hotel from the bar around midnight was also uneventful. I responded to a few emails, set my alarm, and went to bed to get a few hours of sleep I could before needing to wake up to head to the airport. This is where things get weird. I usually don't dream, or rather I usually don't remember them if I do. I do from time to time get crazy alcohol dreams if I get wasted, but they would always have been a continuation of a great night I had the night before, and not at all scary. I was barely tipsy leaving the bar and completely sober when I got in bed. However, this night, I did dream. From what I recall, I was in a huge circular room with towering bookcases as walls and antique furniture decorating the room. Nothing scary or alarming about the room itself. In fact, it looked quite regal, like I was in some European castle from the Renaissance era. I was standing in the middle of the room. I turned around, and on the other side of the room was a plump, older lady, probably in her mid-60s with gray hair, sitting next to a small boy, around 7 or 8, on a chase lounge. The boy looked like some sort of page boy, and I don't remember too clearly what the old lady was wearing, but she looked to be the guardian of the boy. They were both staring at me, not maliciously or with any kind of recognizable emotion that would detect threat. They were just staring. Almost immediately after I noticed them, I hear ringing from a telephone, an old rotary phone placed on the end of a table next to them. It rang a few times, but they didn't even answer it. Frustrated, I walked briskly across the room to answer it. However, right when I could approach them, the lady would pick up the phone. She wouldn't even make an attempt to find out who it was. She neither spoke nor placed the phone against her ear. She merely stuck her arm out, lifted the phone off the hook, and then, after around 5 seconds, placed the phone down again. I was a bit put off, but returned for some reason to the middle of the room. It was like a scene reset. I was again looking at the older lady and the boy when the phone rang once again. This time, I actually felt something compelled at me to want to answer it more than to just out of the routine of answering a ringing phone. However, the same thing occurred. The older lady would let it ring until I got closer, then she would pick it up, suspended a few inches off the hook, then place it down after a few seconds. Then once again, I would return to the middle of the room. Then again, the phone rang, and like clockwork, before I could reach the phone, the lady picked it up. By the third time, I was heavily annoyed. I couldn't understand why she wouldn't let me answer it, or at least let me find out who it was. This time, when it rang, I nearly sprinted to the phone and got closer than the previous times. However, the lady being right next to it could still beat me every time, and did. Out of frustration, I cried to her, "I need to answer the phone! Why won't you let me answer it?" Even though I was in a place I had never been, I had no idea who was calling, I knew instinctively that the phone call was for me, and I felt I had to answer it. The lady remained stoic, as well as the little boy. That was when, instead of going back to the middle of the room, I went to confront her more, and I woke up. When I awoke, the room was dark, and my 3:40 a.m. alarm was going off. I was pre-packed and planned to leave the hotel by 4 a.m. At this point, I wrote it off as a rarely strange dream, and the fact that I only got about 3 hours of sleep, I must have been so tired. Instead of waking up, my mind dreamed that the situation. That was about to be my conclusion. However, when I sat up to reach for my phone to turn the alarm off, I noticed a figure beside my bed. It was a male, 20s, 30s, Middle Eastern looking, who was looking down on me. It was almost like looking at a hologram, like a 3D image. He simply shook his head at me in a disappointed look, turned around, and walked directly through a wall opposite of my bed. By that time, I was fully alert, awake, and I started to freak out. I sat still in my bed for a good few minutes, trying to process, but I realized I didn't have time to sit around and think about what just happened, or I was going to miss my flight. As a note, the sound of the phone ringing in my dream and the sound of my alarm were two different sounds. I have definitely been tired enough in the past to dream about my alarm, but it's always the sound of my alarm, not a completely different noise. Additionally, the old woman, the boy, and the man I have never seen before. Once, I was on my way to the airport and could start processing. I wondered if it was a ghost, if it was trying to communicate with me through my dreams. Could the woman and the boy be guides trying to stop this communication, or was it my own subconscious defenses trying to protect me from contact? The spirit, or whatever it was, didn't seem angry, and I didn't feel threatened. I only sensed sadness and disappointment. It was most definitely human emotions I saw on its face. I think the fact they turned around and left through the wall scared me more than seeing their actual presence at the time. If it wasn't for the fact they were 3D, I would have thought it was an actual person in the room, as all features were distinguishable. I never dreamed about the room, the phone, the lady, or the boy again, and I never saw the man either. I moved to New York City a year later and just moved back home this year, after 5 years, and had never had another experience like this again. I hope if what I experienced was actually communication from a lost soul, that they can find what they were looking for to be at peace.